Hi, welcome to this how-to guide on creating live composite video lectures. These are an interesting and engaging way of creating lecture recordings. I've uploaded a separate video in which I introduce live composite video lectures and talk about why they're so interesting. If you haven't seen that video yet and would like some additional context, go ahead and give it a look. The link is in the description. One of the images I showed in that video was this one. This is the setup that I will be describing today for creating live composite video lectures. It's a fairly simple setup. It involves dual monitors and a webcam. And essentially what happens, here's a bit of a schematic, is this system combines the full screen display capture of a PowerPoint slideshow or whatever presentation software you use. It combines that with the video image from a camera and creates a live composite. And what this means is that the video presenter or the lecturer can watch themselves interact with overlaid slide content in real time. Now, there are a couple software tools that I'd like to draw your attention to for creating live composite videos. First is OBS Studio. OBS Studio is the tool that creates the live composites, and it's also what does the video encoding. So at the end of recording, there is a video file that can be immediately uploaded to whatever video sharing site you prefer. Another useful software tool is called spacedesk. And spacedesk, let me go back to this previous slide. Spacedesk allows you to use a smartphone or tablet or other web-connected display as a secondary display, a secondary monitor. And so if you download the app for spacedesk on your smartphone and you have the program running on your computer, you can send the display information through your Wi-Fi network to that smartphone or tablet, essentially turning it into a second display. All right, so next I'd like to just show how this actually works in terms of running the software. And so this is OBS Studio. I've already installed it on my computer and opened it in full screen. So this is how it will look when you first open it. The first thing you should do when getting ready to create a live composite video is to go into the settings and check a few things. The things I'd like to call your attention to, we're going to skip streaming because I haven't used this for video streams yet. If you want to use it for streaming, you can go ahead and learn about these settings. But the output, this is important. I use OBS Studio for recording lectures, and so I set my recording path. I just save these videos to my desktop. It makes it easier to manage them, and then later when I have the final video, I can archive it in a separate folder. We each have our own conventions for saving files. Recording quality, there are a bunch of options. Now, this is one of the lower quality settings, but this is actually sufficient. And if you go up to any of these higher ones, the file sizes become quite large. So just on indistinguishable quality, large file size, a 20-minute recording will be a dozen gigabytes or so. It becomes quite large. And then of course this highest quality would be, I can't imagine how big the files would be. But high quality, medium file size is generally pretty good. Recording format, I use MKV. You can use whichever other files you like. There's an issue with MOV. So if your recording stops in the middle, the file is unusable, versus MKV. If the video stops in the middle, you can recover it through video editing. And then the encoder, I use hardware encoding. I have a dedicated GPU, a dedicated graphics processor, and so this works well for me. Depending on your own setup, you might use one of the software encoders. This is what takes the video signal and converts it into a video file that can be uploaded. And it took me a while experimenting with these different options until I found one that seemed to produce the best video quality. So maybe start with hardware, see if that works. If not, you can try the different softwares. Audio tab, this is important. This is very important. By default, at least when I open OBS, all the audio input, all the audio sources are disabled. And I need to change the desktop audio to the default. This means that when I play a video on YouTube, for example, or I have a video embedded within my PowerPoint slides, that audio will automatically be brought into the OBS Studio. Then I also want to set my mic/auxiliary audio to my webcam, which I'll be using. So I use a Logitech C920. I need to set both of these. This is important. If I don't do this, I'm not going to have audio from those two sources. And then the video, I like to record in full HD, 1920 by 1080, and so I just set both of these at that value. And I set my frames per second at 60. If you prefer a different value, maybe 30 or 25, that's perfectly fine. And the last one I want to talk about briefly is hotkeys. I'm not going to set any of the hotkeys for this video, but you can make it a little bit easier to operate OBS if you, for example, set a hotkey to start streaming or stop streaming or start recording, stop recording. You can use your numpad, for example, on your computer to toggle those settings without having to click in the OBS window. Alright, but I'm going to leave these blank for this video, and I'll click OK. Now what you can see is there's a mic signal now from my webcam. This is the microphone. If I were to play a video on my desktop, this of course would also show audio. Okay, so now I'm at this point where I have the settings, the basic settings in OBS already, and I can start adding video sources. So this is an important window. This is where most of the work is going to happen. I'm going to start by clicking the plus sign and adding a video capture device. And I'll just leave this as the default video capture device. You can rename it whatever you like. And then I'll click OK, and what this will do is put me in this top left corner. Now I don't want the video of me to be just in a corner. I want it to fill the entire screen, which is this entire black rectangle. And so I need to change my resolution from the device default to a custom value and use this drop-down menu and change it to 1920 by 1080. I don't know why the device default isn't 1920 by 1080. I would assume that is the default for this webcam. But yeah, I made that change. If by default your webcam fills the whole screen, cool. So I'll click OK. One other thing I'll do while I'm talking about the video is I'm going to right-click in this window, and now in this contextual menu I'm going to drop down to Transform and flip horizontal. What this does is it creates a mirror image, and later I'm going to be adding slide content over in this space, and by making it a mirror image it becomes a lot easier for me to interact while monitoring myself. My OBS window, so what you're viewing right now, is actually on a monitor just behind the webcam. So I am watching essentially what you're seeing right now. I'm watching myself in real time, and I can watch that monitor and interact with the content. Having this mirror image makes that easier for me. You can practice with it mirrored or not mirrored and figure out what works best for you. There's one last thing I'd like to point out. If you go back into this right-click contextual menu for the video and go back into Properties, I'm going to click on Configure Video, and there are all these options. And when I open this up, I have a few things set on auto, like white balance. I don't want my white balance adjusting through the recording, so I turn off auto and I set a white balance level that seems to produce good colors. Under camera control, for me, the focus and the exposure are also set on automatic, and I want those to be off. I don't want the focus changing, and I don't want the brightness or the lightness or darkness changing over the course of the video. And I think for the most part, if you can set your camera in a visually pleasing way, you should be able to turn off all of the automatic features. That way the video won't be changing settings while you're recording. Okay, so that is the video layer. Now I need to create the slide layer, and to do that, let's go over to PowerPoint. So I've already opened up PowerPoint. I know a lot of people use PowerPoint, but there are other presentation softwares out there. This is the one I know best, but I would imagine all this functionality can be replicated in other softwares. But this is where I'm going to be creating the slide content, and I'm going to just create some demo content. So demo slides. Now, if you look at this video of me, you'll see I have a space over here that I'm going to use for the slide content. So I want the content to be on the right side of the slides. And there's a lot more formatting I could do to make this pretty, but I'm just throwing this together for demonstration purposes. And then I'll just create some slides. So here's slide 1, and again I want the content over to the side. And I'll duplicate this a couple times, make that slide 3 and slide 2. And then I always like to have a blank slide at the end. This reminds me it's the end of the slideshow. Sometimes I'll also have a blank slide at the beginning, but I won't do that in this one. If you play around with the slides, you'll figure out what's a nice way of presenting the slides and reminding yourself when the presentation is finishing. I'm just going to add some quick transitions, so these push up like that. Okay, good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch this, and it's opened up on this screen over to my left. If you remember from that image earlier, this is my screen 1. So here's where my slide content is displaying. Now I want this slide content to appear in this OBS window, and that's how I can interact with it. So I'm going to hit a plus sign and do display capture, and click OK, and add whichever display my slide content is on. Happens to be display 3, and there's the slide content. But where did I go? All right, so here I am. Here's the display capture. If I press this eye icon, I disappear, and so there's a problem here. Somehow I need to be visible behind this display content. Somehow I need to make this white background transparent. There's a way to do this in OBS. So first what I want to do is go back over to PowerPoint and format the background. I'm going to pick a color by going down to More Colors. And I don't want a standard color, I want a custom color. I want to pick a color that is really close to this background for the video. It doesn't have to be exact, because as you can see, the bottom of the wall is darker than the top. There's a gradient. And there's also a bit of a hot spot right here from where my ceiling light is hitting the wall. So the color doesn't have to be a perfect match, because of course there are multiple shades of gray back here. But I want it to be about the middle color. So what I've done is I've put this rectangle, this white rectangle, next to the color I want. And I'm going to go down to get the right level of darkness. That seems right. And then I need to add a little bit of brown. So that's going to be over here in the red-yellow area. And that looks good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be close. Now, I almost clicked OK, but I don't want to click OK yet, because I want these values. I'm going to be using these values here in OBS. So under Display Capture, I'll right-click it and go to Filters. I'm going to add a filter, so I'll press the plus sign here, and I can choose whatever filter I want to add. The one I want to use is called Color Key, and I'll click OK. Now the default color key is green. This is what you would use for doing a green screen. I don't want green, I want to use a custom color. And so here's the default green. I'm going to select a color. And instead of dragging these crosshairs around, I have the exact values I need. It's 224, 223, and 216. Then I'll click OK. And then what I want to do is set the similarity value all the way down to 1. What that means is it's going to make exactly that color transparent. Now, you might find that you can get a slightly better image if you increase this a little bit, or you can adjust the smoothness. I'll let you figure out what works best there, but you can make some slight adjustments to improve the quality of the resulting image. But this is basically what you need to do. So I'm going to hit close. Now that I've done that, now that I have this color set, I'll click OK. It makes this the background. And then I'm going to apply that to all. And so now all these slides have the same color background. Now when I reopen display capture, there is the demo slide with the white background, formerly white background, removed. It's now this kind of grayish background which has been removed. Now the reason to select a slide background that's similar to the background of the wall is that here, if I get in front of these letters, you can kind of see a little bit of gray color around the letters, and that's because when the video outputs these fonts, it rasterizes them, and so it kind of smooths the edges of the letters by blending the black color with the background color. And so what that results in is around the letters there's just a little bit of gray or a little bit of blend between the color of the letters and the color of the slide background. Now since the slide background closely matches the wall background, you don't get this effect around the letters. You get a fairly seamless visual presentation. And now I can go back over to my slides and oops, why is it doing that? It's not supposed to do that. What the heck happened? All right, well, that's gonna drive me crazy. Let me relaunch these slides. There we go. I just had to relaunch PowerPoint. That's never happened before. All right, anyway, here's the demo slides, what I just created with these nice transitions. And I have my 3 slides, and then I have my final slide. Now I have this final blank slide because now I know I can, at the end of my lecture, I can give a nice, some nice concluding remarks, because if I accidentally went to the last slide and then hit next again, this happens. Of course I get to this end of slideshow, which I don't want, so I always have that blank screen at the end. So let's go back to the beginning of this, and I'm going to show you kind of how this works in terms of recording. Tell you what, I'm going to add one more slide up here, and this will just be a blank slide, and I can transition into that. So this way we start with a blank slide. All right, so now I have my slides ready. It's a really basic slide presentation, but I do have a basic slideshow ready, and I'm going to add a couple extra scenes here. So I'm just going to call this, oops, blank. Click OK. I just need a blank scene at the beginning, and then I'll just call this end, and another blank scene at the end. And so what happens when I click on the scenes, it fades in and then it fades out. Now these are pretty fast fades, so I'm going to change, here's the scene transitions. I can select if I want cut transitions or fade transitions. The fades are nice, and I think a whole second is the right number. So if I go from blank to scene, there's this nice fade in. I can give my presentation. I can say thanks for watching and fade out. All right, so here's how it works recording wise. I'll start with the blank screen. I'll hit start recording. I'll click on to the scene. I'll finish. I'll click on end, and then I'll click stop recording. And I don't have any hotkeys enabled. Normally I do this with hotkeys to simplify it, but I'm going to drag the controls over here. So these buttons are close to these buttons. All right, so here's roughly how it looks. Hi, welcome to my brief demonstration lecture. I'm going to be sharing some demo slides. As you can see, this is the first slide, followed by the second slide, and I would like to conclude with the third slide. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you found that to be an enjoyable and interesting lecture. Okay, good. So I went through that process, and now I actually have a recording I can share with you. Let's watch what I just recorded. This is a file that was just created on my desktop. Hi, welcome to my brief demonstration lecture. I'm going to be sharing some demo slides. As you can see, this is the first slide, followed by the second slide, and I would like to conclude with the third slide. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you found that to be an enjoyable and interesting lecture. Okay, so that's roughly how it works. I just went through the whole process of setting up OBS, and I just gave a quick demonstration of how it's, once you've figured out OBS and once you've figured out how to set up the slides, it's a very simple process, and you can essentially immediately create a lecture recording. So I'd just like to finish by going over these steps. So for slide preparation, it's good to place the slide content on one half of the slide, or at least in a dedicated zone where the video of the instructor won't be causing any interference. Set the background color of the slides to approximately match the backdrop of the video. Okay, so that's for the slides. Now in OBS, it's good to check the audio-visual settings when you first open up OBS. Then set OBS hotkeys if you think those would be useful. You've heard me clicking in this video a lot, and that's because I didn't set any hotkeys. And so by setting hotkeys, you can end up clicking a bit less. Then set the webcam source and adjust the video settings. Also remember to flip the image horizontally if you prefer it that way. Then set the slide source, and if you create the slides second, it will automatically put the slides as the top layer. Remember, the slides need to be on top of the video. You're essentially looking at the video through the transparent slide background. And so to get that transparent slide background, you need to set a color key filter on the display capture for the slides, and then set the color key to exactly match the color of the slide background, which you set during your slide preparation. And then one final remark, I didn't really talk too much about where to place the displays. In the recording I just created, I had my slide content a little bit to the left, and I had my OBS window in front of me just a little bit to the right. And that's actually not a good setup. It worked for what I was trying to accomplish here, but it created some funny sightlines. So when I was watching myself in the OBS window, I was looking just off to the side of the webcam, and that doesn't look so good. It's not very engaging. So that's actually where the slides should be. The slides should be roughly behind the webcam, and I won't be looking at the slides so much, but through my peripheral view, while I'm making eye contact with the webcam, I can kind of remind myself about what's on the slides. Then I'll have the OBS screen, so that it'll be a full screen showing the OBS window. That'll be over to either my extreme right or extreme left. So I have to turn my face 90 degrees to view that content. And so what I'll be able to see when looking at the OBS window is the live composite of the slide content plus the video of me, and that's where I'll be monitoring myself. So when I'm really engaging with the content, I will be looking in the direction of the content that appears on the slides, or that appears on the screen with me. And so it's more like I'm engaging with the content when I'm looking at it, and otherwise I'm looking at the webcam. So yeah, that's the setup, and hopefully this video made sense. I did this all in one take. I think you've noticed that, and that's one of the great things about this setup is once you've figured out what you want to say, once you've created the presentation, it's really as easy as pressing record, giving the presentation, pressing stop, and you have a complete video. So hopefully this was a smooth presentation. Hopefully it made sense, and hopefully you're able to use this same setup to create your own interesting and engaging lecture recordings. Thank you for watching.